I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over downtown. 53 years old, and I'd built this empire from nothing. Martin Enterprises wasn't just a company. It was my legacy, my proof that a woman from nowhere could create something extraordinary. Behind me, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Ms. Martin, this is Ethan Drake. We need to talk. It's about Daniel." My fingers tightened around the phone. Ethan Drake. I hadn't heard that name in 3 years, not since he'd left his position as my chief operations officer to pursue opportunities overseas. He'd been brilliant, strategic, and, if I was honest with myself, there had always been something in the way he looked at me during late-night strategy sessions that made my pulse quicken. But I was married. I was faithful. I was everything Daniel apparently wasn't. I typed back quickly. "My office, tomorrow, 9 a.m. That night, I came home to find Daniel in his study, door half closed, speaking in hushed tones. I paused in the hallway, my heels silent on the marble floor. "Laura, I can't keep doing this. Bella's getting suspicious." His voice was strained, anxious. "Yes, I know what we agreed. The gala next week, we'll figure it out then." Laura. The name hit me like ice water. Laura Chen, his college girlfriend, the one he'd sworn meant nothing anymore when she'd resurfaced at a charity event 6 months ago. The one he'd assured me was just an old friend reconnecting. I walked away before he could catch me listening. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of our king-sized bed and stared at my reflection in the vanity mirror. Still beautiful, people said. Still commanding, still successful, but apparently not enough to keep my husband faithful. My phone buzzed again. Sophia, our daughter. "Mum, are you okay? Dad's been acting weird lately." "Secretive," I texted back. "I know, sweetheart. We'll talk soon." The next morning, Ethan walked into my office exactly at 9. He'd aged well. Those 3 years had added silver to his temples and depth to his already striking features. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, and when his dark eyes met mine, I saw concern there, and something deeper. Bella. He didn't call me Ms. Martin. He never had, even when he worked for me. "Ethan, your text was cryptic." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, but he remained standing. "Because what I have to tell you can't be said sitting down." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, then looked at me with an expression that made my stomach drop. "I've been back in the city for 2 weeks. I didn't reach out because I wasn't sure if I should get involved, but then I saw something I couldn't ignore." He handed me his phone. On the screen was a photo of Daniel and Laura taken at a restaurant I didn't recognize. They sat close, too close, her hand covering his on the table. The timestamp showed it was from 5 days ago when Daniel had told me he was at a late business dinner with clients. I handed the phone back, my face carefully neutral. "Go on." "There's more." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been doing some digging, nothing illegal, just public records and a few conversations with mutual acquaintances. Bella, Daniel, and Laura have been seeing each other for at least 4 months. But that's not the worst part." "There's worse?" I heard the brittleness in my own voice. "He's been moving assets, quietly restructuring ownership of certain company holdings. I think he's planning to divorce you and take half of Martin Enterprises. Laura has been pushing him. She wants him to claim he's been an equal partner in building the business." I walked to the windows, my back to Ethan, processing this information. The betrayal was one thing, the calculated theft of my life's work was another entirely. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. There was a long pause. When Ethan spoke, his voice was low, almost tender. "Because I care about you, I always have. And because I can help you stop him." I turned to face him. "How?" "Let me gather more evidence. Give me 1 week. I have contacts, resources, and more importantly, I know how Daniel thinks. I worked with him long enough to understand his patterns." Ethan stepped closer. "But Bella, you have to be prepared for what we might find. And you have to let me do this without asking too many questions about my methods." I studied his face, looking for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. All I saw was determination and that same fierce loyalty he'd always shown me. 1 week? I agreed. Over the next 7 days, I played the perfect wife. I smiled at Daniel over breakfast. I asked about his day. I attended a charity luncheon where Laura was also present and watched them carefully avoid looking at each other. Every interaction was agony, but I kept my mask firmly in place. Sophia came by the office midweek. At 28, she had her father's analytical mind but my spine of steel. "Mom, what's going on? You're different." I closed my office door and told her everything. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "That bastard! And with her! Laura's been calling him. I saw his phone light up last week when he left it on the kitchen counter. The message preview said, 'Can't wait to see you tonight, my love.' Why didn't you tell me?" I thought I was misreading it. I hoped I was wrong. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom." "Don't be sorry, be ready. We're going to handle this, but we're going to do it right." Ethan called me that Friday evening. "I have everything. Can I come over? Daniel's at his club, right?" He was, every Friday like clockwork. Or so I'd thought. For all I knew, he was with Laura. Ethan arrived 20 minutes later with a leather folder thick with documents. We sat in my home office, and he laid it all out. Bank statements showing wire transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, emails between Daniel and Laura discussing their plans, text messages that made me nauseous with their intimacy, and most damning of all, legal documents Daniel had been preparing with a lawyer, documents that would challenge my sole ownership of Martin Enterprises by claiming he'd been an equal partner from the beginning. "He's planning to file next month," Ethan said quietly, "right after your company's annual gala. He wants to humiliate you publicly and then take half of everything you've built." I stared at the papers spread across my desk. The gala. He's been insistent about Laura being invited. He said it would be good for optics. Having prominent community members there. He wants her there to witness his victory. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Bella, I have an idea. It's bold, and it will be very public. But it will expose them both and protect your company. Tell me." His plan was brilliant, risky, dramatic, and absolutely brilliant. The next week flew by in a flurry of secret preparations. I worked with my lawyers, with Ethan, with Sophia. We coordinated every detail, every contingency. Daniel noticed nothing. He was too busy sneaking phone calls and making excuses to slip away. The night of the gala arrived. I'd chosen a dress of deep emerald silk that hugged every curve and made my hair look like burnished copper under the lights. Diamond earrings caught the light when I moved. I looked powerful, untouchable, every inch the queen of the empire I'd built. Daniel met me at the bottom of the stairs in our home. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, distinguished. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have felt proud to have him on my arm. "You look beautiful," he said, and had the audacity to sound sincere. "Thank you." I took his offered arm. "Shall we?" The grand ballroom of the Sinclair Hotel was transformed into an elegant wonderland. 500 guests mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing, string quartet playing. I'd spared no expense for this event. After all, it was going to be memorable. I spotted Laura immediately. She wore red, bold, and eye-catching, her dark hair swept up to show off her elegant neck. She saw me and raised her glass in a small salute, a smile playing at her lips. She thought she'd won. She thought she was about to witness my husband leave me and take half my fortune. Ethan appeared at my elbow. "Everything's ready. The tech team is in position. Are you sure you want to do this?" I looked around at the gathering. Business partners, society friends, competitors, journalists. Everyone who mattered in our world was here. I've never been more sure of anything. Daniel was across the room, shaking hands and laughing with a senator. He caught my eye and winked. The casual confidence of that gesture made my blood boil. At exactly 9 o'clock, I stepped onto the small stage at the front of the room. The quartet fell silent. Conversations faded. All eyes turned to me. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight to celebrate Martin Enterprises' 25th anniversary. I smiled, warm and gracious. 25 years ago, I started this company with nothing but a dream and determination. I built it brick by brick, decision by decision, through countless sleepless nights and impossible challenges. Applause rippled through the room. Daniel beamed at me, still clueless. Tonight, I want to talk about loyalty, about integrity, about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who truly support your vision. I paused, letting the words settle. And about what happens when someone you trust betrays that trust. The atmosphere shifted. People glanced at each other, uncertain. Daniel, darling, could you join me up here? I smiled at my husband. He looked surprised but pleased, probably thinking I was about to publicly praise him. He bounded up the steps with confidence, taking my hand and kissing my cheek. And Laura Chen, would you come up as well? This concerns you too. Laura's face went pale. She froze in place, champagne glass halfway to her lips. Please, I said, my voice carrying a note of steel beneath the sweetness. I insist. She had no choice. Every eye was on her. Slowly she made her way to the stage, her red dress suddenly looking garish under the lights. I nodded to Ethan, who stood near the back. He signaled to the tech team. The massive screens that had been displaying images from the company's history flickered to life with new content. Text messages appeared, blown up large enough for everyone to read. Laura, I can't believe she still doesn't know. God, you're good at lying to her. Daniel, 25 years of practice. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. After I get my half of the company, we can finally be together. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Daniel's face went from confused to horrified in seconds. Laura looked like she might faint. Wait! Daniel started, reaching for the microphone. I held up a hand, cutting him off. More images appeared. Photos of them at restaurants, hotels, walking hand in the park. Email threads discussing their plans to take my company. Bank statements showing Daniel's secret transfers. This, I said, my voice ringing out clear and strong, is what betrayal looks like. This is the man I trusted for 28 years of marriage. This is the woman I welcomed into my social circle, invited into my home. And this was their plan, to steal not just my heart, but my life's work. Bella, please, Daniel's voice cracked. Let me explain. Explain? I turned to face him fully, and the fury I'd been containing for 2 weeks blazed in my eyes. Explain how you've been sleeping with her for 4 months. Explain how you've been embezzling money and preparing legal documents to claim half ownership of a company you never built. Explain how you planned to publicly humiliate and divorce me right after this gala, leaving me with nothing. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Cameras flashed as journalists captured every moment. Laura tried to leave the stage, but Ethan was suddenly there, blocking her path with his presence alone. Stay, he said quietly, but his voice carried. Everyone should see exactly who you both are. Who the hell are you? Daniel demanded, finally recognizing him. I'm the man who's been documenting your crimes for the past 2 weeks, Ethan replied calmly. I'm also the man who's been in love with Bella for 5 years, who watched her waste her devotion on someone who never deserved her. My breath caught. I'd suspected, but hearing Ethan say it out loud, in front of 500 people, was something else entirely. Daniel Martin, I continued, regaining control of the moment, you have 48 hours to sign divorce papers that will leave you with nothing. My lawyers have everything. Evidence of your infidelity, your embezzlement, your fraud. You can sign quietly and leave with some dignity, or you can fight me in court and lose everything, including your freedom. I suggest you choose wisely. You can't do this, he whispered, but his voice held no conviction. He knew he was beaten. I already have. I turned to Laura. And you. I have evidence of your involvement in his schemes to defraud my company. You're named in the criminal complaint. I'll be filing Monday morning unless you leave this city And never contact Daniel or anyone in my family again. You have 24 hours. Laura's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She looked at Daniel, probably hoping he'd defend her, protect her. But Daniel was staring at his shoes, broken and exposed. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking out at the assembled crowd. Some faces showed shock, others admiration. A few displayed barely concealed glee at witnessing such spectacular drama. I built Martin Enterprises on principles of integrity, innovation, and hard work, I said. Those principles remain unchanged. What has changed is my tolerance for betrayal. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can take advantage of kindness or mistake patience for weakness. I handed the microphone to Ethan and walked off the stage, my head high, my spine straight. Sophia was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps, tears streaming down her face, pride shining in her eyes. She hugged me fiercely. "Mom, that was incredible." Behind me, I could hear Daniel trying to speak to the crowd, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But the damage was done. In the court of public opinion, he'd already been tried and convicted. Ethan appeared beside me. "You did it. We did it," I corrected. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." He looked at me with those dark eyes that had always seen too much. "I meant what I said up there, about being in love with you." "I know." I touched his cheek gently. "But right now I need to be alone. I need to remember who I am without a man defining me." "I understand." He stepped back. "But Bella, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility." I smiled at him, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. I'll remember that. The next morning, Daniel's lawyer called mine. He would sign the divorce papers. No contest, no fight. He knew when he was beaten. Laura sent a text from the airport. "You win. I'm leaving." I deleted it without responding. She wasn't worth my words. 3 months later, I stood at the same windows in my corner office, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Martin Enterprises was stronger than ever. The story of my public triumph over betrayal had made headlines for weeks, and perversely, it had enhanced the company's reputation. Clients admired strength. Investors respected decisiveness. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Dinner? No pressure. Just two old friends catching up." I stared at the message for a long moment. I'd spent these months rediscovering myself, my interests, my passions, my strength. I'd learned that I didn't need anyone to complete me. But maybe, just maybe, I was ready to explore what it might be like to be with someone who truly saw me. I typed back, "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, your choice of restaurant." His response came immediately. "I'll pick you up at 7:45. I set down my phone and looked at my reflection in the darkening window. 53 years old, powerful, independent, and finally free. Daniel had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, he'd given me something precious. The reminder that I was stronger than any challenge, fiercer than any betrayal, and that I didn't just survive. I thrived. The story of Bella Martin wasn't about the husband who cheated or the company that almost got stolen. It was about the woman who refused to be a victim, who fought back with intelligence and strategy, who emerged from the ashes not just intact but transformed. As I gathered my things to leave for the evening, I caught sight of the invitation on my desk. Another gala, another charity event. This time I'd be going alone. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. And that made all the difference. I walked out of my office with my head high, my heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. Somewhere out there, Daniel was learning what it meant to lose everything that mattered. Laura was starting over in whatever city she'd fled to, and I was here, standing in the empire I'd built, ready for whatever came next. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. As they closed, I caught one last glimpse of my reflection. I looked powerful, confident, untouchable. I looked exactly like the woman I'd always been, the woman I'd temporarily forgotten in the comfort of a marriage that was never real. But I remembered now, and I would never forget again. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the darkening sky. My car was waiting. Sophia was coming over for dinner. Ethan was a text message away. And tomorrow, Martin Enterprises would continue to grow, to thrive, to prove that integrity and strength always won in the end. I smiled as I slid into the back seat of my car. Some stories ended with happily ever after. Mine ended with something better, happily independent, finally free and powerful beyond measure. That was the only ending I needed.